A new dawn, a new hope, a new series in this channel. Audio Mythbusters. In this series, we are going to bust the audio myths and see if they really hold true. Like the original Mythbusters, I will be super objective and test each of the hypotheses in real world and real examples. And we see the results together. And today's myth is the low cut EQ or high pass EQ. Hypothesis 1, low cut messes your drum transients. 2, low cut messes your bass and your bass phase. This will be fun. Let's go. First, drum transient with minimal phase EQ. Original. And then we take the low cut, 6 dB, 12 dB, 24 dB, 96 dB. Original, 6 dB, on top of each other. Transient looks very identical. 12 dB. The transients are pretty similar. 24 dB. Now we see a bit more wider area. There's a bit more change, but I still see, without sidechain, transient, only sidechain. Transient behavior is still very identical. And final 96 dB. Okay, now we have a difference between these two. The white area is much more bigger. We lost some of the initial transient, especially here. Now we are doing a 500 cut. Origin signal, 6 dB, 12 dB, 24 dB, 96 dB. Especially with 6 dB, if you take a look at the transient behavior, there is a change, but that change is not necessarily making it worse or better. It just makes a change due to the cut itself. It's still almost as transient. 12 dB looks quite similar. The transient changes ever slightly and drops heavily. So we kind of thinify a bit the sound, but we are removing a lot of frequencies. So the character change in the sound is kind of expected. 24. Now this kind of messed up the waveform a bit more, 96. Now the transient behavior is really different. So conclusion, if the cut is gentle, even the harder slopes are mostly alright. It won't change your transient behavior. If you're cutting your drums aggressively, then gentle slopes are safer option for your transients. But keep in mind, using low cut means removing frequencies. If the removed frequencies are the transient part of the sound, then you will of course remove the transient part. This video is sponsored by LANDR. If you are looking for a better way to distribute your music, LANDR distribution makes it simple and cost-effective way to share your music with the world. For just $23.99 a year, LANDR distribution delivers your music to all major streaming platforms and stores worldwide. And they include YouTube Content ID and Shazam Discovery without any cost. Want to release your cover songs? It is just one-time $15 fee per track. No recurring charges and you keep 100% of your royalties. Plus, you get unlimited uploads for all your music. And the best part, your track stays online permanently, even if you pause your subscription. If you want to check them out, you can save 20% with the link below. Let's try something even more interesting. What if we look at a sound that doesn't have much lows to begin with? Now, this is even better example because we are using a hi-hat sound and cutting around 130 Hz. So there's not much here to begin with, just a bit of rumble that is not needed for hat. A very classic example. And we will see if this really changes the transient behavior of the hat. 6 dB without sidechain. Together. Oh, look at that. Looks exactly same almost. We can call it almost identical. 12 dB. Still identical. 24 dB. Still identical. This is really identical. This is interesting. 94 dB. Every slight difference. Remember, this is a very aggressive cut. 96 dB. Still the transient is more or less same. This really concludes it. If the cut is not on top of the sound itself, if you are just removing rumbles, it doesn't matter. It won't change the dynamic character and transients. And back to the snare example, if you actively removing quite a bit of frequencies, it starts to matter. And gentle slopes looks to be a better option. I can hear you calling already. What about the linear phase EQs? Does that make any difference? Same hi-hat example, 24 dB cut, linear phase EQ. Looks to be very similar, but do you see this? This is the latency that EQ introduced. So between these two EQs, if the cut is not on the sound, just go with the minimal phase or the regular settings. It doesn't matter. I can hear you. What if that aggressive cut with the snare is done with the linear phase EQ? Okay, now I feel scientific. This was good. This is good. Original sound, linear phase EQ 12 dB and 12 dB 500 cut on our rimshot, original and linear phase EQ. To be fair, linear phase EQ looks very similar to the original sound, and the minimal phase cut has this a bit of weirder shape in it. But if we put these two on top of each other, looks pretty similar. All the EQ cuts are 6 dB, but what if we make it more aggressive? Now we have 24 dB cut. Linear phase EQ looks to be holding quite similar to the original sound, while with the minimal phase we get this even weirder ups and downs. On top of the original sound, it looks still quite similar. It looks to be that if you are making more aggressive cuts and still want to keep the transient behavior very similar, linear phase EQ is way to go. What about pure ringing? What about that? Let's zoom in and see if we can spot any pre-ringing. Is there anything? I guess modern EQs are come a long way. Even with the 24 dB cut, we really don't see any pre-ringing whatsoever. The real myth busting on this one, if you are not removing too much sounds, doesn't matter much. Use the slope you want, use the EQ you want. Minimal phase is more than enough. If you are making more aggressive cuts, removing quite a bit sound from your drums, linear phase EQ looks to be holding transient behavior very similar, even cuts like 24 dB. And now you have your definitive answer. Now, second myth to bust. Low cut bass messes your phase. Let's take a look if it does. Single sine wave. What we are doing is having that 20 Hz low cut. Very common, some people do it in 30 Hz, some people do 20 Hz. We are in F. Fundamentals around 43. So we are well below the fundamental. Again, the same test. 6, 12, 24 and 96 dB cuts. 6 dB cut, it's quite small change. It doesn't really matter that much. 12 dB, the change is a bit more obvious. Maybe like 20 degrees. Now things get weirder when the cut is bigger. Now we have 24 dB cut. Not only it changes your phase significantly, it also changes sound's envelope. So the quiet and loud parts are altered quite a bit. This effect is even more obvious with the 96 dB cut. Look at this. Not only that, we actually have this ringing behind the sound. This is actually something that I didn't know. It really messes up your envelope. In some cases, you can actually say very aggressive minimal phase low cuts really changes your attack and decay times and make your sound loose. This is how original sounds, and this is how 26 dB cut sounds. Do you hear that tail? If you wonder if it is due to the zero crossover, we can alter the zero crossover and take a look at the waveform one more time. Zero crossover, both signals, and regardless, we have this initial attack and decay afterwards. But what about the linear phase? Just to exaggerate, 96 dB linear phase cut at 20 Hz. Comparison to original sound. Now we have this purring here, and we have that decay at the end as well. The phase is exactly the same, but we still have this slight envelope at the beginning and the end. But what if it was 24 dB? The effect is still very visible. 6 dB? An effect is still there compared to 6 dB minimal phase. Linear phase both has pre and after ringing kind of style. The minimal phases only has it in the after. So were they right? Yes. In this case, minimal phase EQ really changes your phase, but that is not necessarily a bad thing. The phase is a relationship. If your kick and bass is out of phase aligned, that's a good thing. If they were aligned before and after the EQ, if they are not aligned anymore, that's a bad thing. So change of phase is not a good or bad thing. I think this is more important, especially when you have shorter plucky bass sounds, because this means even with gentle cuts like 12 dB, you are altering the shape of your bass, and this has an effect of how it sounds. Let's take a bass line like this. Classic rolling bass line, and do a 24 dB cut at the 20 Hz. If you take a look at the linear, it followed pretty much same. And if you take a look at the minimal phase, for me, here we have this gentle quieting going down. However, in the low cut version, first we see it starts quieter, gets louder and gets louder again, goes down, kind of comes around, and then it's still louder here. Peaks also change. You see here, we start quiet, go up here on the peak. So we actually created an envelope that we seen previously, like quieter to louder envelope, right? Right here. One can almost argue we actually have that transient effect in minimal phase EQ in bass sounds more than you will see in the mids or highs. You see this? And then it goes down. And lows are louder. So even our dynamic range is changed. Minimal phase EQ, locating your bass changes your phases. Half true. Minimal phase EQ changes depending on the slope. Linear phase EQ doesn't. But here is the more important truth. Minimal phase EQ really change the envelope of the sound. So be really careful with more transient bass sounds. I think this is really an eye-opener.